One of the basics that everybody should end up knowing is how to dry brush and how to do washes. I'm going to explain it in a two-part video here. On the right I have a pile of sand, and I'm going to be doing the smoldering ember ruins like DM Scotty ended up doing in the TheDMsCraft on episode 7. It's just PVA glue, which is white glue and sand. And on the left here I end up having a mess of hot glue, which I just put some globs down and drug it out. I'm going for texture in this video just to demonstrate some of the basic foundations. Later on I'm going to end up doing practical applications. Here we have yellow paint. Usually apple barrel is good because it's cheap. I ended up getting this other paint, which really isn't that good for my purposes. We're going to squeeze a little bit of paint out. That's a kitty litter cap. We want to water the paint down. Use hot water. The hotter the better because it'll help soak into the nooks and crannies. The pigments in the acrylic paint will end up going where the water flow is. I just have a cheap paintbrush that you can end up using around the house to do like trim with. For this it really doesn't matter. You want to mix it up, the paint, so it's like really watery, almost like an ink-like consistency. There is not enough water in there, and like I said, the paint sort of sucks, so I'm going to add some more. Really want to get it like, like almost a Kool-Aid texture, so it's just like almost totally water-like. Just dab it on. Get in all the nooks and crannies, make sure there's some puddles there. One thing with the acrylic paints, a lot of times you have to do 2 coats on it, and this will show it. And here we go, that's what it should end up looking like after just 1 coat. That's what it looks like dried. I had it set in front of a fan just to speed things up. Doing the second coat, it'll help end up filling in those little crevices and soaking down, which is what you want for a wash. I didn't have any orange paint, so you just mix a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red. Stuff we ended up usually learning in kindergarten or elementary school about colors. And you could do this with most of the craft paints, well, almost all of the crafts paints, if you end up knowing what 2 colors make another color. And fast forwarding it up, just make sure you mix it a lot. I had a little bit too much paint on that brush. You don't really want it super watered down because we're just going for the surface on here and not the nooks and crannies. You can see I dropped my paintbrush. Luckily it wasn't on my pants. See, TM Scotty explains it better in his ruins, the episode 7 there. He does a really good job with doing the smoldering ruins. For the next step with dry brushing, we want to end up getting our red out. And dip your brush in, don't use a lot of paint. Take most of the paint off on the paper towel, or how you see me taking most of the paint off there on the newspaper underneath. You just want to use a light touch, just hit the raises in the texture with the red. It's not really showing good in the direct light, except for when I have my hand over to the side. Hit everything, hit the tops. You just basically want to end up making it pop. So, a little bit like that, how you can end up seeing the red. Now we're going to end up doing the slime pool. Basically, you want to end up doing the dark first. Always wet your brush. Keep your brush nice and wet. Do a dark green, just base it up. Once again, get it in all the nooks and crannies all the way around. Like I said, this isn't a practical demonstration. This is more of just basically a good way to end up practicing. You're not wasting a lot of material. You're not, maybe like 5-10 cents worth of stuff. If you're having problems, it's a good way just to end up getting a little bit of practice done, and it's what I ended up basically trying to get my hand at, because nobody explained dry brushing or washes to me when I first started crafting, so all my stuff ended up turning out looking a bit like crap. So I just want to try to give back to the newbies, because nobody explains it when we're just starting out, and you sort of have to discover it on yourself. They're needing a second coat. Like I said, a lot of the acrylics you're going to end up needing a second coat on, so it's just the way that the pigments are. You're not going to want to end up spending $5 for a little jar of paint when you can end up getting a big one like this for 50 cents at one of the big box stores. Why waste your money? You know, second coat it, no big problem. You should end up using thin coats like when you're doing miniatures and stuff like that anyway. And here we go. Once again, you see, take a little bit, just a little bit of paint on the brush. Scrape most of it off. Well, rub most of it off. You can see the ridges there popping, because like I ended up explaining a little bit earlier, with dry brushing you're just basically wanting to get the tips covered with paint, the tips of the texture that you're working on. Really does a lot to end up making stuff pop. Basically, for the most part, a lot of times, if you're using like how I used a dark green to start out with, you're going to want to use a lighter green. If you're doing snow, you might end up having, you know, like a bluish white. There you can see it popping out on the ridges and not really getting into the crevices there. That's a little bit of a better look. It takes a little bit of time to get your hand at it. Now I'm going to do a wash on it, and it's going to soak into the crevices with an even darker green. If you're going to do a wash, you also have to end up basically being prepared to expect that your highlights are going to be a little bit dull. You really want to wet it down a little bit, like with the smoldering ruins there, that use as hot of water as you can, so it ends up mixing with the paint and flowing, sort of like how hot chocolate mixes better with the hot water than it does if you end up putting it into cold water. And it's going to be like swampy. There you see it. Here I end up having the fire again, the smoldering ruins. I just want to hit it with a little bit of black, just to end up, you know how like the sticks and all the wood and the campfire, sort of like at the end you have the glow, but then you end up having the charcoal. You can end up seeing it pop a little bit more, giving it a little bit of extra dimension. So like I said, you just rub it off, rub as much of the paint off as you can, and just do a real light touch with it. You're just wanting to end up hitting the ridges. You can end up basically coating it with some varnish and spots if you want to end up having like a little bit of glowing. There you see how it ended up making that one little bit of pebble and sand there look like the charcoal, like a big log burning. Okay, here I am. Everybody have fun.